one. It takes a little bit sometimes to warm itself up. But
Yeah, yeah.
all
It's
right,
good to see.
yeah, I think we're on. This is official. What's up, everybody? We are here with Dr. Chip Dodd. We're today is Feelings Friday. This is always one of my favorite days of the week because this is we get a chance to talk about feelings and just kind of in the world that we live in today, and we can attach it to anything because the thing is that there, like we talk about oftentimes, Chip, is that there's no such place called the way, and wherever we go, we got to take all of us with us, and God has given us tools to be able to confess what's going on inside of us. And so, regardless of what circumstances that we are in, our eight emotions, our feelings, where we are, will always be the same. They always are true, and we are still able to tell the truth. So these are tools that God has given us. So how are you feeling today? I mean, you got a new shirt on, different location. Like, what's going on with you?
Hey man, this shirt. I got this shirt on. This shirt's been. Hey, what's up behind you? Look
That's
at
my
that.
wife. She's jumping in.
This shirt's like 20 years old. Most of everything I wear is about 20 years old. You tell by looking, right? It's like Mr. Fashion.
It don't look like 20 years old. It looks good. I like
Yeah,
it. I
I keep
like
it
it.
going. Hey, yeah, Sonya and I are actually at the beach for one leave tomorrow. But I didn't want to miss this. I parked her down at the beach and came back up here so we could talk, and then I'll go back.
Well, man, thank you. I appreciate the sacrifice. You living that hard life in the coronavirus right now.
Yeah, right now, right
Yes,
now.
living
And
that hard life.
I bet there are 2,000 people out at that beach right now. So
2,000.
yeah, easy, easy.
So my question is, are they social distancing?
Yes, it's crazy. Like everybody's like 6 feet apart, but there's at least 2,000 people. So it's all so mixed up. I don't even know. And yet I've got a friend of Sonia's. She grew up with is in the hospital right now, and he's hanging on. Prayers are going out to him, hanging on by a thread.
Hmm.
But that's just what's pronounced in our world. I mean, we got all the racial struggle that's been around for and I know as long as we've been around or before. We've got COVID. We also just got a notice this morning. A dear friend of mine's daughter was just diagnosed with breast cancer. It's like
Hmm.
everything's happening. In spite of what the news is telling us, everything's happening to our neighbors around us. And like you said, there's no such place as a way.
Yeah.
Either we deal with it and keep stepping forward together with God, or we try to find a place to hide, and that's isolation and addiction. It won't work.
Yeah.
And I understand rest, replenishment, recreation, redemption, resurrection. We've got to do daily life, but keeping up with our hearts, because we don't keep up with our hearts and keep up with each other, and honestly stay connected to God, we're going to drift, and then we're going to react, and then we're going to be alone. It's just sad time. These are sad times,
Yeah.
Dottie.
It really is.
Real
It really
times.
is sad. In so many different ways, so many different levels. And one of the things that's been interesting, and this week, just recognizing and embracing the sadness of it. I have oftentimes got on, and I tell people each week I've come on, and I haven't had a specific subject, a specific topic. There's some things that are brewing in my mind, but I don't have anything that I've just said. This is what we're going to focus on. This is what we're talking about, and we've been really interacting with the audience, with everyone this weekend. That's really so. I guess I say that to say, like, Chip, since you are our guest, you are here. You're a regular. We actually co-do this. So the question is do you got something to say? Do you got something to talk about? What's on your heart and mind
Yeah.
in light of this current
Yes.
situation we're in?
Yeah. Several things because I think about how I think all the time. Sonia says, I mean, do you ever think about anything else really? And basically, no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm like the idiot savant kind of thing. I hate to say it that way. I don't mean it in a negative way, but like I do one thing, and this is the one thing. So yeah, because I think about it all the time. But a bunch of things. Uh, One is there's this addiction statement. Remember, addiction is anything that we get hooked on that takes us away from how God made us
Okay.
as relational creatures. Because addiction is a kind of a relationship. And it's one part of the brain is selling us a bunch of crap. Okay, one part of your brain brings a crap wheelbarrow up and says, hey man, I want to sell you this crap. And the other part of the brain buys it. And that's what we do to stay away from our feelings. That's called reactivity. Whatever I got to do not to feel. Okay, so I'm going to set that up.
Okay.
So that's addiction. The things that take us away from having to feel so we can have a full life without having to feel.
Okay.
Because feeling's painful, right? I mean, look at what I say we, but really you, in terms of so many Black people are going through so much right now, more than here, because it doesn't look like anything's happened here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because everybody here, I would say 99% are like, look the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I was thinking, you know, this whole movement, awakening, is so at risk of being hijacked by all kinds of different agendas. And I was thinking, sadly, about how that could happen. Like on some level, the main thing has to stay the main thing.
Yeah.
And I know you're focused on the main thing. And I know everything goes all over the place. I get all that. I mean, we dress in all kinds of colors, but still the main thing is what's underneath those clothes, right?
Right.
That's the main thing.
Right.
And so I was thinking, like, number one, we've got to maintain the ministry of reconciliation. That is God's gift to us human beings, that we've been given a ministry of reconciliation. And St. Paul clearly says that we no longer look at people through a worldly point of view, that we're called to look through the eyes of a human being. And it doesn't mean we don't discern. It doesn't mean that we see somebody all cracked up on something, or somebody drunk, or somebody howling at the moon. We don't recognize they're howling at the moon. Something's off. You know, it doesn't mean we're blind, but it means we look for more. We look for more.
Yeah.
And so.
Let me ask you this, Chip. When we talk about, like, we have to maintain the ministry of reconciliation, and you started off with addiction, how are you playing those two off of one another?
Yeah, that's number two. And so number three is this. I think the main thing, you and I both were at the University of North Texas. Me a long time before you.
Yes.
You know, you look at me, you look at you. I'm old, and you're still Dhati, you know.
I got grades.
Even
even though I cut off some of it, you can't see it as easy, but it's still there.
You can run, but you can't hide it.
Yes.
Hey, if you come home with all dyed, everybody's going to know.
Yeah, everybody will know. Yeah,
you can take it, though. But anyway, so I was working for student services at the time. And isn't it funny how everything's become a symbol now? This was called student services, but its symbol was SS. Now think about that. That's like SS, the SS. That's Germany, crazy. Anyway, that's nothing. So I worked with all kinds of students, from people from different countries, minorities, socioeconomic differences, and so on. I remember this one real wonderful Black guy I was working with. He was a freshman, and he said to me, he said, "Listen to me." I'm like, okay. And I remember seeing him. He was a volunteer in a race. I remember he was like one of the people in the race where people would run, and he was one of the marker people setting up the race and so on for people, like a 5K or something. I remember seeing him that day too. But he said to me, "You don't understand." He said, "I'm Black, and I have to do twice as much and work twice as hard to get the same thing that someone else will get. And like, if you run 1 mile, I have to run 2, because 2 is the only way I'm ever going to wind up equal." And I remember knowing what he was saying was truer than I wanted it to be. And I knew that what he was saying was very sad to me, and I didn't want to hear it. And I didn't want it to be true, but there was truth in it.
Yeah.
Okay. You relate to what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah, and that's truer for people who of color, but mainly people who are color of Black, than even other people of color. And because of everything, we'll just call it everything.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, everybody's had pain. Everybody's had pain. And therefore, we get into all lives matter. But that's not the point. The main thing is the main thing this time around. The main thing is for us to reconcile ourselves to reality of real, genuine racism. Real racism, not about everybody, but about one group of people right now. I know it's of color. I get that. But right now, the main thing is the main thing that we address what this kid was telling me. And he was a kid at the time. I mean, I was in my later 20s at the time. I started beginning to work on my PhD at North Texas at the time. So I got in a job, just kind of, trying to find my way through, And so remember, we talk all the time. Everybody's got pain, Dhati. You got it. I've got it.
Yeah.
And I've got to be able to identify my pain and where it's taken me and what I've done with it to be able to relate to other people's pain.
Yeah. And I think that's a very good thing. But in a culture and in a society that is so hell-bent, in a sense, if I can use that, hell-bent on getting away from the pain, which leads us to the addiction cycle, yes. How does that impact our ability to maintain the ministry of reconciliation?
Well, and it's always, I still believe that people who are reconcilers have always been in a minority. Go back to the 12. We use that, but the 12, the reconcilers have always been in a minority. And in the United States of America, I've got a book coming out called Hope in the Age of Addiction, comes out end of July. And it really does point to the real pandemic in our country. The real pandemic has nothing to do with race, socioeconomics, education, geography, regional people where they live. The original real problem in our country is a pandemic of addiction. And this book defines addiction differently than the scientists want to tell us it is. It is an issue of trying to run away from how we're made, and whatever you do to do that. Now, let's go back to this kid at North Texas. He said that to me, and I felt pain. I felt sad. I also was able to identify with the pain. I didn't say I identified with him related to what he's in his shoes. I related to me in my shoes, like, oh, pain, God, I know, not fitting in, struggling to find out what the rules are, looking around to see what normal is. How do I need to act so that I don't wind up humiliated? All these things. So the main thing is how does this young man address what his struggle is, and his struggle is emotional. And so we've got to address the struggles emotionally before we move into the solution, the fix. Because I saw a dear friend of mine, he said, I've always been Martin Luther King. From now on, I'm Malcolm X. And I was like, man, listen, I get it, but what are you telling me? What he's saying is, I can't stand these feelings. These feelings are ridiculous. The solution I've heard about and I've practiced is bullcrap. I'm done with it, which means he's running from grief. He's running from anger. He's running from sadness. He's running from loneliness. He's running from fear. He's running from the pain of how this world works. And that's a grief moment. Right.
And that's, and actually, that is one of the main things that I think is inhibiting our ability for the ministry of reconciliation. I remember, and I take it back for us, at the church, there's been times even before, but in 2016 was when all of this was going, a lot of this was, was heightened, like in the presidential election with President Trump and all the stuff that was going on, the Trayvon. There's all the different, a lot of scenarios was happening 2016. And as we were engaging in this and trying to bring about reconciliation, what we realized is that we can't have these talks because this is a traumatic thing, and everybody is trying to get away from their pain. Everyone is trying to get away from the hurt of it, and there's expressing it in different ways. But the common theme is that we're not willing to do it, and so to do the work. And one of the main things that I recognize in that is that we need to address the issues of the heart. And so in 2017, so immediately after the election, that's when, if you go to Blueprint, we did a series called 18 Inches, which was basically a walk through the voice of the heart, trying to lay it, and just kind of walking through those 8 emotions. And we did that. And the big part of the reason why we did that was because I recognize is that we cannot, because this is a traumatic event and because we're trying to get pain, running and escaping our pain and escaping our grief and escaping everything, is that we're not able to start building solutions, about where we're going to go with it. And so I am in agreement with you that I think that it is very, very important for us to address our own kind of emotional states so that we can engage in a healthy way, right? The injustices that we see taking place in America.
And if we can't do it, if we're not able to do it, then we're really not able to be part of the solution.
Yes.
And so that means that addiction is going to have control of this whole movement.
Yes.
And the main thing won't be the main thing anymore.
So talk about that a little bit. Talk about the idea of what you say is addiction is going to have control over the movement. And while he's talking, you guys, I see some of the comments in here. I see yours, Marianne, and I see yours, Sherez. But put it in the comments. What are some thoughts? This is what we're talking about today. We're talking about how do we understand addiction and its role, or its as an inhibitor to the ministry of reconciliation. And so that's really what we're talking about today as another underlying, really core thing about how we're right now. Obviously for us in this day, we're talking about racial tensions, specifically, but this can be applied in so many different things. How addiction inhibits the ministry of reconciliation. So, Chip, talk to us a little bit about what you mean about addiction will have control.
Yeah, addiction is like an impaired attempt to have the life God gave us to have. Okay, the life that everybody's seeking. Everybody of every melanin stripe. You know what I'm saying? Just everybody. But it's an attempt to have your full life without having to pay the price of having to feel fully.
Okay.
And feel fully, we know, is sad, hurt, lonely, fear, the 8 feelings, not reactions to them, not resentment and apathy and anxiety. Those aren't feelings. They're steps away from feelings, right?
Okay.
Addiction's an attempt to have the life that we have. Hey.
I'm sorry. This is what happened when you're in my house. You get the dogs.
Hey, the boss just came in.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that dog walks in my house, I'm going out the other way.
This is my stay out my house dog.
Hey, I'm a believer.
Yeah.
So addiction is an attempt to get away from how God made us, to run away from the feelings. Another word for it is, inability or intolerance for vulnerability. And that friend of mine said, I was Martin Luther King, now I'm Malcolm X. He said, okay, I'm done. Being vulnerable, being truthful, feeling these feelings, going through the process, living in hope and longings, keep walking towards the future with hope and faith. I'm done with it. In other words, that's an addiction reaction to avoiding grief. So what is he going to do to get away from what he feels?
Yeah.
Well, he's going to eat, run, drink, act out in some way, shove people away. He's going to create division instead of making decisions. And that's what, when we look at life and the world takes over, and I'm not saying, man, every day we struggle with the world taking over. Every day, right? Yeah, regardless of whether the sun's out or it's raining, every day we struggle with living scared, living sad, living joyful, living hurt, living lonely. That's our life. Yeah. I mean, we live between east of Eden and we walk the road towards glory, west of glory. We're in the middle.
Yeah.
And so if he division versus decision. Division is what we do when we look at life from a worldly point of view. Decisions, what we do when we decide how we're going to live and relationally.
That's good. And so like when we're talking about that, I guess I'm on board. I guess practically, is it like as we see ourselves, because we addiction, like this is this is what we're talking about, right, in our day. But we notice as a normal way of human life that people are trying to constantly get away from their pain, right? And so if that's a normal human reaction, apart from this, the traumatic events of what's taking place, the normal human reaction is to escape our pain, to escape away from it, and to lean into these addictive habits that begin to take control. Is there anything unique, or is it just learning how to build these muscles up in just everyday life, or is there anything unique to do when there are traumatic circumstances?
Yes, I mean there is a healing process that you and I talk about all the time. We're doing it through Known 360 and so many other ways. You're doing it every time you go to the pulpit, every time you interact with people you love. I mean, you're doing it. But I mean, it really is feel your feelings, tell the truth. And that young man that I was working with in North Texas, 1,000 years ago, that man was loaded with toxic shame, what had been impressed upon him that was a lie. Toxic shame always is a lie. Mm-hmm. You should be this, you should be that, you shouldn't this, you shouldn't that. You've got to be more than who you are to be equal, to be somebody. But below toxic shame is pain. Below toxic shame are the judgment we have towards ourselves and others. I mean, toxic shame is when I look at you, I see you. When I measure my insides compared to your outsides, I'm in toxic shame.
Yeah.
Either I'm better than you than worse than you, which means I'm in judgment. When I measure my insides compared to your outsides, I'm judging, which means I'm reacting to toxic shame. And Dhati, toxic shame is always a lie. It always lies.
Yeah, that's good.
It never doesn't lie. But what's underneath the toxic shame that this young man was telling me about is the truth of him, which is pain. I believe, and I know this is a minority opinion, but I believe we are in need of a great grief movement. Now, you would tell me what it looks like.
Well, I mean, no, I don't think it is beyond. I think people are saying lament. We need to lament. We need this idea of lament, and and like even we're doing a series, and it says, why isn't everybody crying? Right? Is this kind of like I need you to grieve with me, those who grieve. Like instead of trying to figure out like all the facts, like it's interesting that we got to figure out all the facts before we can grieve Rayshard Brooks. That we have to do that. Like we have to figure out all the facts before George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. Well, let's get the facts. So, and that's traumatizing in so many different ways. And so when you're talking about the grief, specifically if, and again, I'm just to paint caricatures, but specifically, like if white evangelicals oftentimes would not respond with, what's the facts before I can grieve. So it's sort of like as an African American, it feels like everything has to be perfect. I got to get the perfect shot in the camera. I got to get I got to be perfectly still and silent. I can't say anything, any of those things, because otherwise it's justified that I'm shot, that I'm murdered.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But even it's just like when humanity is lost, there's grief. Like in any time, like there needs to be grief and there needs to be sorrow, and all that. And I just think that like whether that's black on black crimes, white on white crimes, all these things is like there's sadness and there's grief that takes in place. And just like even in a justified police shooting, there's still sorrow and there's grief.
Yeah, war itself. War.
So that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I think that what you're saying is the grief and the lamenting, but it seems like in the midst of all this is that we can't even agree to just grieve and lament, whenever there is something like this that is happening, because we go to a very numb state, apathetic state. Well, tell me the facts. Tell me the facts. Tell me what's going on.
Fear becomes more powerful than we seek right more than life.
Yeah.
Like you're talking, what you're talking about, like, okay, what are the facts? What are the facts? Okay, what's right? And then we can feel. No, feel.
Feel.
And then let's seek what's right.
Yes.
So I keep seeing, and I understand what it means, like no peace,
no justice, no peace.
It needs to be seek peace, and then we'll find justice.
Yes.
Meaning, like grieve with a purpose. Grieve towards reconciliation. Everyone who's capable of grief is capable of rebonding, rejoining.
That's good.
Coming back together.
That's really good. That's a great perspective to look at it. All right, let's get to some of the comments on here. Mary Ann basically just has been saying what we've been saying is that the problem is that we've been taught in our society not to feel and that feelings are wrong. And because we've been taught not to feel it and that feelings are wrong, we run from our feelings because we don't know how to utilize the tools that our God has given us. We don't know how to be hurt. We don't know how to stay in our, to do the work of being hurt, or like you said, to deal with the underlying pain of shame, or, just the fact that we're human. And so we run from these things in so many different ways because we've been taught not to feel, not to have these things. And so I 100% agree with you. Linwood says this, I'm sorry. We got cops. I'm in the city. You hear the helicopter. I don't know if y'all can hear it. Coming from the perspective of addiction definitely helps me understand why people, me included, won't acknowledge the pain caused to themselves or others. So that addiction, is that one of the applications that you would say is that, like, when you're in control and you're not willing to feel, that you get away from it, and to some degree I can't fully give myself to you and you myself to me, so we can't be intimate with one another, and in that loneliness I'll feel instead numb and apathetic towards you. Is that a form of addiction? Is that hinders us?
Yes, and addiction becomes a defense to keep everyone away from my feelings, because I found something better than relationship.
Yeah.
Relationship is hard. It's a struggle. It's of God.
That's good.
Daily vulnerability.
I love that statement that you said. I found something better than relationship.
Yes.
I think that's powerful, because that's what addiction is. It's like relationships is hard, and I found something better than relationship. But we recognize that it's never going to be more fulfilling than relationships because you've been created for relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And love always beats, it's going to sound crazy, and love always beats safety.
That's good.
It does. It does. I mean, you would not be married to who you're married to if you were about safety.
What are you saying about my wife, Chip?
Yeah.
Hey, Angie, I got your back. Angie, I got your back. Hold on now, Chip. What you saying about my wife? What you saying? What you saying?
I'm not talking about how dangerous she is, but I'm talking about the story of how you got married. That's true. That could include how tough she is.
Yeah.
How scary you need to be. How scary. But I mean, when you decide you loved Angie and Angie loved you, okay, well, immediately you had to walk through love. You had to live love, and you had to value love more than safety.
Yeah.
I mean, because your story is known. I mean, it's in the Advocate. I mean, and so it's like I'm going to marry her. She loves me and I love her. So let's go ahead and walk this walk. Like, ooh, this could get scary and sad and hurtful.
Yeah.
And yet love beats safety. And addiction is all about the safety of not having to be exposed as a relational, needy creature.
That's really good.
I mean, and this is not about color. This is about pain.
Right. Yeah. And escaping our pain. And the way we escape our pain is by addictive behaviors. Addiction is an impaired attempt without having to feel fully. And I love what he says, addiction, when we're trying to escape the pain, is when we find something better than relationship.
Absolutely.
Right. When we find something better than relationship.
You know what, Dhati? I'm recovering myself. And I want you to know that addiction is better / easier than relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Addiction is. And that's
for a while.
So Linwood is asking this: how do we help fulfill a person's need to alleviate pain as we share reconciliation?
What's amazing about that is to be able to I keep coming back to empathy. Empathy means what's the story of your life, and how did you keep heart in it, and how did you lose heart? What's the story? What's the narrative? People use that word narrative all the time. What's the story of your life and the feelings that went with it? Like, because if you can't identify with pain, you've got nothing to offer anybody in pain.
Yeah.
Can't get what you don't have. And there are a lot of people who deny ever. Dhati, I heard this one guy say, he was doing a marriage conference with a bunch of guys. He said, I got to let you know before we start the marriage section, my wife and I have never had a fight. I remember I threw my pencil up there and said, I'm out of here. And 4 other guys said, I'm done. They shut their books. I mean, like, what? So there are people who are in denial. They're addicts, whether they're drinking booze, using cocaine, or doing nothing. They're addicted to control. Whatever I got to do not to feel. So that person cannot participate in reconciliation.
So how would you differentiate that, what you just said, that the addiction and the need to alleviate pain from the needs of the heart?
Yeah, so like alleviation of pain really happens through relationship. Like if I've lost someone who I value, someone is gone from my life, let's say death. Like somebody who understands loss, who sits beside me, and I don't want to be touched, but I want to be known at that point. But let's say slowly I become touchable again through my grief, and they put a hand on my arm. I'm like, it feeds me. It touches our hearts. It means we're not alone. Because see, human beings, honestly, I know when we get older, we fear death, but our first fear is the fear of being alone. So if you know what pain in life is, regardless of where you come from, what country or whatever, if you know pain in your life by knowing your own story, then you can be with somebody in pain. And just the presence of caring, not I feel your pain, but I'm going to be with you while you have your pain. Those are 2 very different things. You can't feel somebody else's pain. You can only feel your own.
So let me ask you this. That's kind of where I'm getting at is, so is the need to alleviate pain bad, is the question. The need to alleviate pain, is that bad? And then the second question, or is it just simply the application that either takes you to addictive behaviors or relational,
That is an incredible question. All of us seek alleviation of pain, okay? But we either do it through how we're actually created and the tools we've been given to do that. It's a little bit longer. It takes longer. Or do we alleviate pain through the quick fix?
Yeah.
Which numbs me, anesthetizes me, mood alters me, and takes me away from the process of feeling. So we're all seeking alleviation of pain. That's how come addiction is a counterfeit form of what we're made to have. See, it alleviates pain.
Yeah.
But there's a level of alleviating pain which is called relational process versus quick fix. I mean, when the violence that we're seeing, it alleviates pain. It makes me feel powerful. It makes me feel relieved. It discharges me being helpless. I now am no longer little. I'm big. I'm no longer small. I'm large, and yet it externalizes grief I need to have, or sorrow I need to have, or healing I need to have. And if we there's a hope that if we actually sit together and alleviate our pain by truth telling, like in a lot of ways, when you did the series after the election, people started processing their pain. They were processing their fears, their prejudgments, prejudice. They were processing division, and they were coming to making decisions. Like, people who are like each other, generally speaking, like to hang out with each other, right?
Yeah.
That's not a division, that's a decision.
Yeah.
It's called affinity. And that's not about color. That's about people whose heart find affinity with each other. Like athletes, generally speaking, don't hang out with the band members who play the trombone in the marching band. It's just,
But Chip, because of our racialized society, affinity in color
Yes.
that there is that.
Yeah, because we don't know each other.
Right.
Because we live in an addicted culture, a culture of control over feelings, avoidance of relationship. Hey, Dhati, the numbers are staggering. I know we're not doing that today, but if we did the numbers on addiction, it would either lead to despair or lead to action, because we're looking at hundreds of millions of people addicted in this country.
Yeah, that's good. Marianne, grieve with other people no matter who they are. It says that in the Bible. Let's go. It says, LOL, hey Chip, Angie, don't play, love her. Oh, that was Deanna. Deanna coming to Angie's defense.
Hey, so that's why I need to stay scared, right?
Yeah, you need to. Hey, you start messing with.
Hey, Dhati, you were protecting me.
I was like, I got you. You want me to come at you more than you want her to come back. So, Linwood, profound. I found something better than relationship. Chip Dodd is explaining addiction. Yeah, I mean that is true. I mean, I think that's really what we've been talking about. We've been talking about the need to understand addiction as something that we're running away from what we've been made to be, but understanding that if we've been made to be reconciled, made to have relationship, but when we can find things that are better / easier than relationships, because relationships can be hurtful, the relationships bring pain, and if I can kind of experience life without heart and without experiencing the pain, and I can just numb out, we know it's easier, it's not better. And that's why the Bible constantly tells us is that we have to, like, one of those things is that we will continue to hunger and thirst for righteousness, for God's way of doing things. That's what it is. Like, we got to keep living the way God has called us to live. And I think it's so critical for us. And that means staying in the pain, even though we want to alleviate the pain. So we got to take our pain to a place where we can experience more pain. And that's relationships, because that's where the only true healing is going to take place.
The healing pain. Healing pain. Yes.
And so it's kind of like good news but bad news, right? I mean, for us that's living in the flesh, because if you are spending your life trying to alleviate pain, you're going to live an addicted life, because there's no place away from pain. But if you're willing to live your life passionately, a willingness to endure the pain for something that's greater than the pain, i.e. relationships, connectedness, right? Those things, then we're able to recognize. So it's about whether we're going to live passionately, right, or in survival, right?
Man, that is so good. That's you just literally quoted Hebrews 11.
Yeah.
Walk by faith.
Yes. Walk by faith. Amen. Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. Did it.
Well, Chip, it is 11:38. We are already over. And people, you got to get back to your vacation, basically. You got to get back to your vacation, the hard life over there.
Yeah. Sonia said you got 1 hour. You better be back.
You better be back. So we want to respect Sonia's request. Yeah. I appreciate you guys jumping on. Again, we will be continuing in our Cry Out series this Sunday, so please join us this Sunday. This Sunday, we've been talking about different perspectives about people's cry outs. This Sunday, we have our non-Black people of color speaking on this matter. So I'm really excited about that. And so join us this Sunday. And then next week, we'll be back on, have some more things to talk about and say. So we love you guys. We appreciate you. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Hey, Dhati.
It's still, hold on.